Hey guys, if you're tired of raking and picking up leaves by hand, well, keep watching. I'm going to show you a tool that I use that makes cleaning up leaves extremely simple and very efficient. Today I want to tell you about the Toro Ultra Leaf Blower Vacuum. This is a really cool item I picked up about a year ago at Home Depot. I paid about 70 bucks for it back then. I think they're slightly more now, but it's definitely worth the money. I'm going to tell you about some features and some tips on how I use it to make picking up leaves more efficient. So what do you get in the box? You get the tool itself. You get a blower attachment, which goes on the front here, and there's actually multiple nozzle tips that come with it. This one right here is really small, which gives it a very powerful direct jet. And there's another one that you can put in there that's a little bit more open, which probably gives you a little bit more volume, but not as concentrated. The other thing you get is the vacuum suction tube, which I'll show you later on how that thing attaches and how it gets used. And of course, you also get the bag that goes along with it, which is used to pick up and gather all the leaves. It has a zipper on the bottom here for easy emptying. Some of the cool features that I found on this thing that were really attractive to me was the actual on-off button wasn't just a switch. It's actually a dial so that you can control the power. When you get into some of those areas and you're using a leaf blower or a vacuum, let's say you're using it in like a mulch bed, you don't want it on full bore because you're going to end up just making a mess. Or if you're just trying to get in some little concentrated areas without picking up too much stuff, that knob is really useful in adjusting the power so that you can fine tune it and do exactly what you try to do. Another really cool feature on this thing that I actually didn't even realize at first, because I'm like most people, I don't read the instructions, I pretty much just go for it. The cord holding feature on this was really unique. I'd never really seen anything like this before. It allows you to attach your extension cord to the device and give yourself enough slack to plug it in, so that way as you're walking around the yard, you don't end up like yanking out the cord and losing power. So it's a really cool feature that I've never really seen before. So yeah, I really think this thing has some cool features on it that make it really useful and user-friendly. Now, as far as the blower itself, it's pretty powerful. I wouldn't consider it to be the most powerful one that I've seen on the market. I think it says here 340 CFM, cubic feet per minute, is what it moves for air. The vacuum is what's actually more impressive. That's up to 405 cubic feet per minute in volume with the vacuum side of this for picking up leaves. Again, this is the reason why I bought it, was for the vacuum side of it. I've got certain areas in my yard that seem to gather a lot of leaves in corners or in just little pockets that the wind blows, and it just makes these little piles of leaves, and it just gets aggravating to always have to pick this up with rakes and by hand. A couple of things to keep in mind when using something like this: if you are going to be using a really long extension cord, you're going to want to make sure that it is a decent size gauge wire. I would recommend using at least a 12 gauge extension cord if you're going to be using like a 100-footer like I have. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're using this to pick up leaves, it's really best that your leaves are dry. If you try vacuuming up wet leaves, it just makes a mess out of the bag, because this thing will just shred all those leaves and the water just basically gets shot right into the bag and just makes the bag wet. And that bag is kind of up against you as you're using the tool. So it really just makes a messy process. So if at all you can wait until the leaves are dry, I highly recommend that. When it comes to swapping this thing between blower and vacuum, it's really simple. It's a matter of just pushing this tab on the back here and disconnecting the bottom cover plate, which on the blower side is attached to the tube. On the vacuum part of it, it's all one piece. It basically just hooks in the opposite way, and once it's clipped in, all you have to do is connect your bag and you're on your way. So one of the main reasons why I got this Toro Ultra Vac was because of the vacuum feature. I've got a bunch of areas in my yard that are landscaped with crushed stone, or they're corners that seem to gather a lot of leaves. Picking up leaves on crushed stone can be a real pain. It's not easy to get in there with a blower because of all the tight corners. This thing was really neat because you can use this thing as a vacuum on full speed and it will not pick up rocks. It's just the physics involved in how a vacuum works. If anybody's ever tried to use a shop vac and try to pick up like nuts and bolts, it's very difficult because it just won't grab it. It's the same concept here with stone. You can basically just suck up all the leaves on a crushed stone, stir it all around. It won't pick up rocks. And if you find yourself picking up anything that is gonna jam this thing, you can again turn down the power on this with that knob a little bit so that it's not doing so much damage. One thing I find extremely helpful in using this leaf vac and putting my leaves in these paper bags is I picked up one of these leaf bag chutes at I think I picked it up at Lowe's for like 10 bucks. This thing is awesome. It unfolds and it basically fits inside your paper bags, holds it upright and open, so that way if you're by yourself, it's easy enough to just pour whatever you want to get into that bag without worrying about it tipping over. I've got about 100 lineal feet of fence line in the back of my house, and I usually end up just blowing all my leaves up against that fence line. That way it's easy enough to contain, and then I can go back and pick them up with the leaf vacuum. I can actually fit that entire 100 feet of fence line typically in about 3 to 4 bags. So when using this thing as a vacuum, you're not just going to want to plunge this thing into a pile. You're going to want to just kind of stir it around a little bit and let the machine do the work in sucking up the leaves. If you plunge it in too deep into a pile and grab too much at once, it can kind of clog up a little bit. It's not a big deal if it does. You just basically shut it down and either disconnect the bag or pop off the suction tube and just pull out the leaves that are clogged, and you get right back to it. This thing will actually suck up leaf bunches that have those small little branches attached to them, and it'll shred it right up. The impeller on this is actually made of aluminum. Years ago, when I first started using these things when I was a kid, the propellers were plastic, they would crack, they didn't really do a very good job of shredding things, and it would jam up pretty easily. This thing is no joke. It's powerful, it has a metal propeller, and it shreds everything that goes through it. So if you've seen these things in stores and you've considered buying one, don't hesitate. It's not a lot of money, and it really does make picking up leaves a lot easier. So thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to leave some comments or questions down below, and as always, click that subscribe button if you haven't already.